Pete Hegseth gives new meaning to the idea of toxic leadership. The man who Donald Trump has chosen to be his next Secretary of Defense has been accused of all sorts of misconduct. Not only has he never led an organization that would prepare him in any way to run the Pentagon, which is the largest organization in the world, his reputation as a leader at much smaller organizations like Veterans for Freedom, which became Concerned Veterans for America, this AstroTurf conservative group which was created by the Koch brothers. Pete Hegseth was pushed out of leadership of those organizations because of the way that he interacted with women. Now, we know from an email that was given to the press by a member of Pete Hegseth's family that Pete Hegseth's own mother thinks that he's an absolute pig. This email was written because Hegseth was going through a messy divorce, and part of the reason for that divorce was his infidelity, which included things like messing around with his subordinates, abusing his power and authority. And this weekend, in The New Yorker, an article came out that was sourced from former members of Pete Hegseth's staff at Concerned Veterans for America. And they talked about how part of the reason that he was removed from leadership was because he was doing things like bringing people to adult venues and then getting so intoxicated that he would try to get up on stage with the dancers. And his colleagues, his subordinates, would have to forcibly detain and remove him from situations like this. Now again, according to Hegseth's former colleagues, this was a frequent occurrence. Pete Hegseth, when being paid to represent this AstroTurf veterans group to advocate against veterans' benefits, would do things like get so drunk that he would try to dance on stage with adult performers. Not only did he have to settle an allegation for allegedly having raped someone, he's also had similar allegations in the workplace. Now, this type of behavior, it doesn't just speak about who Pete Hegseth is, but it also speaks about who Donald Trump is and what his politics are. The politics of the fascist, of the strongmen, they aren't just about government control. They're also about individual control, control of bodies. For the fascists, there are only three useful types of people, and they will force everyone into one of these three categories. One is weapons, two is workers, and three is wombs. So if you're not useful for the fascist in terms of enforcement of violence against others to impose your policies, you better be a productive worker. And if you're not a productive worker and not a warrior, well, then you're a woman. And you're reduced to being a womb. Everything about the men that Donald Trump surrounds himself with is consistent with some of the world's worst authoritarian leaders. Rampant sexism and misogyny and the violation of women's bodies are an essential part of authoritarianism. So I'm not home right now and I don't have my books with me. One book that I want to encourage you to read if you want to understand how rampant sexism, misogyny, and violence against women is an essential part of these extremist ideologies, you should read Strongmen by Ruth Ben-Ghiat. The subtitle of that book is From Mussolini to the Present. And in that book, Ben-Ghiat goes through the well-known history of the misogyny of Mussolini and how he treated women as conquests, how his being with different women all the time, sometimes consensually and sometimes not, was well known to the fascists in Italy at the time. It's part of what made him this charismatic leader in the eyes of the fascist followers. Ben-Ghiat also talks about more modern rulers like Gaddafi of Libya, who quite infamously detained women and treated them in ways that I don't want to talk about on this app. So don't be surprised if all of this information coming out does not result in Donald Trump withdrawing this man's nomination, because these are the things that Donald Trump thinks are appropriate. He thinks that this is the role of a strong man, and that is the role of women.